Good afternoon everyone and welcome to the Sunset Safari. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie and I have Liam, the wildebeest, who is back from his trip to Kruger, and we're all thrilled to see him back up on Jigger. And out on Wendy we have James and Brian. Now I believe that James is out on foot as we speak, following up on the female leopard tracks that we picked up on this morning around WildEarthTV camp. Now, for those of you who might have missed out, we had a bit of a surprise on the Sunrise Safari. When Scott and myself had closed down for the end of show and we were driving back along Zebra Road on Arethusa, we bumped into a female leopard and Tingana. Now, I said that I believed it was Kwetile, and a couple of the viewers seem to have confirmed that. And now we have what seems to be absolute confirmation. It is indeed Kwetile. So I have raced back to Arethusa for this afternoon's drive. We're going to see if we can find them from where I left them. I have a sneaky suspicion that they're going to be in the drainage line. As you can hear, it's very, very breezy. It's quite windy, and although it is very, very warm, it's 28 degrees, which is something in Fahrenheit that I've forgotten. I'd have to convert it later. 82 degrees Fahrenheit. It is nice and warm. It's definitely heated up from this morning's drive. Now, if you are joining us for the first time, this is a live safari, so everything you're seeing here is happening right here in real time on Arethusa and Djuma game reserves in the Sabi Sands, which is why when we were out this morning, even though we'd closed down the show, we decided to start it up again and broadcast, just to show you that really, really flirty behavior of Kwetile. She seems to be desperately trying to get Tingana to mate with her. While we sat with him, which was probably for about half an hour, she wasn't terribly successful, but I think that he might have warmed up to the idea this afternoon. And without further ado, let us go and see what's happening there. Now, if it is Kwetile mating with Tingana, or at least trying to mate with Tingana, gives us some interesting theories to think about. Because apparently when James saw her last week, he picked up on what he thought might have been suckle marks, so evidence of young cubs that she was feeding. But obviously if she is mating, that probably isn't the case, but we can't be sure, because leopards, just like lions, sometimes exhibit the symptoms of false estrus. She might be adopting that as a technique to keep him distracted from her cubs. I'm not too sure. I had a chat with James about it this afternoon. We sort of went through all of the options, and maybe he suggested that those marks were just a coincidence, so the suckle marks weren't actually suckle marks, they just happened to look like it. And that to me also makes sense, because as far as I know, although we didn't actually get to see them in the end, we just saw Tingana right at the end, about a month and a half ago they were photographed mating on Arethusa. I'd like to be able to say that I spotted Kwetile far away, tucked in deep bush, or that I'd spent hours tracking her, but in reality I would have had to be completely blind to have missed her. She was right in the middle of the road, which does sometimes happen out here. You just get lucky, and it keeps things exciting because you never know what's going to be around the next corner. What I have decided to do is approach, by the time we left them, they were on the northern safari donga. But what I've decided to do is actually approach from the southern end, because that was the general direction they were moving in. And I just want to loop around and make sure that I haven't missed them coming out somewhere here, just so that I don't spend too much time walking in the drainage line after them. One thing I do want to do is just hop on the Game Drive channel while I can and see if the other guys want to join me in the search. Have to wait my turn to join in this conversation. Sounds as though, and I'm sure many of the viewers have picked up on it on the dam cam, that there is an absolutely enormous elephant herd on its way through Arathusa Lodge once again. Really carefully on some of the sandier roads for tracks. Afternoon stations, if you copy, I had Manuda and Mfazi Igwe on Northern Safari Donga, and it looked like they were mobile south into the drainage line when I left them this morning. I'm also making my way to that area to see if we can follow up. Just chatting to Sean, it seems as though we're going to have a full brigade out to help us search for these leopards. I am really curious to see what comes of this. I almost felt sorry for her this morning, but it was quite incredible to watch just all of the vocalization that she was doing. She was running up to him and being really playful, jumping up and down, wrapping her tail around his head, and all the while growling in what I can only assume to be quite the alluring leopardess tone. Mentioned that Kotile did have suckle marks, or appeared to have suckle marks, and I also mentioned that Kotile was looking very flirty with Tingana, and he just wasn't interested. He just kept moving, getting up and moving. It was almost like she was irritating him slightly. Now Kathleen, you were wondering if maybe if she does have cubs and those were suckle marks, why that might explain why Tingana was so reluctant to act upon her advances. And I suppose that is a possibility. It doesn't quite explain to me why she was imitating that estrus behavior, if she was imitating it, unless she is in false estrus. But I haven't heard of false estrus happening on a regular basis with females with young cubs. She was demonstrating as well what is known as the lordosis reflex, which comes with all females when they come into, or all female big cats when they're in estrus, where they lie down and lift their pelvis up slightly and swish their tail out of the way. She did do that repeatedly. It was clearly her who was initiating all of the advances. So although it could explain why, if she wasn't in true estrus, he wasn't interested in acting on it, I'm not too sure that it gives us a complete explanation as to why she was behaving behaving the way she was. Didn't look like it was impacting her in any way, but it was there. Now that could be a hunting injury, but it also could well be him acting out in aggression, not in major aggression, but as many of our regular viewers will know, the big cat mating process does come with a little bit of heightened emotion and a little bit of teeth baring. I'm going to go really painfully slowly here around this drainage line, because it's so easy to miss a leopard lying down. I don't want to miss out on an opportunity to see them, just because not only is it of course an awesome sighting, but I am really curious to see what he's doing still, because she was clearly following him, clearly interested, and I'm looking to see if I can find an explanation for this kind of behavior. So keep your eyes peeled for a flash of spots. Luckily I have eagle-eyed VM on the back to help as well. If I were a leopard, and this is of course supposition, and I've also found that 99.9% of the time where I think the leopard should be, they usually aren't. But if I were a leopard, I would be tucked away in some thick vegetation, sheltering from the wind. And do provide the perfect cover. I've just heard word that James is out looking for Madiba. Now, I'm sure many of you have been following the saga of what has happened over the last 2 days. Oh, excuse me, dusty. But for those of you who might be joining us for the first time, one of our favorite young leopard cubs on the show, he's just over a year old. He's been starting to show some independence, and he was also starting to show evidence that he was starting to hunt. And unfortunately, one of his first prey items that he did pick happened to be a stray dog that wandered in from one of the neighboring communities. Now, we've spoken a great deal with the more regular viewers about the fact that there is a risk, however slight, that that dog might be a carrier of rabies. There has been an outbreak in the area of Hoedspruit, and that is always a huge concern out here. But we did manage to get the dog, and it has been sent off for testing at Onderstepoort. Luckily, the Sabi Sands management have decided that as soon as we do find Madiba, we're going to call them in straight away, and they're going to give him a vaccine against rabies, regardless of whether or not the tests come back positive. So they're essentially adopting a better safe than sorry approach, and just giving him that little bit of an extra chance in case those test results do come back positive. And with that vaccine, he'll have one as soon as possible, and then he will have one a little bit later. It will be 21 days later, and all it will be was a dart that's filled with the vaccine, and then They will shoot it into his bottom or into one of the thick muscle masses. It will drop out naturally. You might get a bit of a fright, but it is overall in far and away any. I'm just going to have a quick chat with Sean about where I saw these leopards. This was exactly where I saw these leopards. Hello, hello.
Morning.
Good morning, how are you? Good, thanks. How's it? Last time I saw him, he was on that termite mound. Go for it. Yeah, please. I'm going to just maybe do a loop around. If you're going to walk from here. Okay, cool. I'll go drive power lines, sharp. Yeah, look like Quitile, as far as we know. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, very, very pretty leopard. Yeah. Okay, enjoy. Okay, cheers guys. Cool. One of the brilliant Arathusa trackers is on his way to follow up. Head down into the drainage line. And we are going to loop around the other side and just follow up from the other side of the drainage line. Let's see what we can find. Cool. Enjoy. Cheers, guys. People who are very, very experienced in finding animals in this area. And I'm sure that Reese, the tracker in particular, I'm sure that he knows all kinds of secret hiding places within this drainage line. I'm sure he's been working here for many years. And that gives a level of experience and an advantage that you just can't beat. Now we're considering once again the possibility that if she does have cubs, Jennifer, you were wondering if it's possible that she might be faking and he's onto her and that's why he can't be bothered. This is a really difficult question for me to answer without giving you supposition. I'll give you the options. One is that she's entered a false estrus, and the reason I say that is because to the best of my knowledge, and I can be corrected if I'm wrong, to the best of my knowledge, that action, that behavior of female leopards is entirely hormonally based. They can't just turn it on and off at will, and they can't act. They're not like humans in that they can pretend. But they can go into a false estrus, which imitates the hormones, and it has been known to happen in lions, which means that it could well happen in leopards as well. Particularly lions with small cubs. Hello, big giraffe. What a big male giraffe here. Nice, beautiful bull. On a mission to somewhere. I'm also just keeping an ear out because apparently that enormous ellie herd was somewhere close to the lodge just round here. And there, if we have a look at him, you can see those thick ossicones on the top of his head and a rubbed bald at the top, and that's a clear indication that it is a male, apart from the obvious signs, which sometimes aren't so obvious if they're hiding behind a bush. But that is one of the best ways of identifying male and female giraffe. He's definitely a nice mature bull. Maybe somewhere in the region of, let's say, well over 10 years old easily. He hasn't got that deep, dark, almost black color that some of the really older bulls have. Okay, let's see if we can just get a slightly better angle on him. Possibly feeling a little bit camera shy. Totally relaxed body language. I think he just spotted something over there that was more appealing than the guari bushes over here. There we go. I don't want to shift any further just because he is alert to us. The minute the animals stop what they're doing and start to look at you, it's worth just switching off and letting them relax a little bit. There, that long tongue just poking out as he's munching. And that tongue can be up to 50 centimeters, so half a meter. And if I had to convert quickly in my head, that's probably around 20 inches in length. So really, really long and incredibly dexterous. And the perfect tool for stripping guari leaves away from their branches. Which is exactly what he's doing. And you might see that dark tinge to the tongue as it pokes out every now and again. And that is because it is infused with melanin, which many of you know will give you those dark freckles that you might get on your skin. It is a very dark pigment, but it's also a very good toughening pigment. So it helps to impregnate the tongue and stop it from getting cut by any thorns or sharp branches. And amazing to think that with that long neck down all the way to that stomach, that these animals are ruminants. Just think about how far those balls of cud, the balls of grass, have to be passed back up into the mouth in order for them to chew them a second time around. Definitely one of my favorite animals to sit and watch. They just impart such a sense of tranquility somehow. Must be to do with their size. He's just heading off, tucking himself away behind the spike thorns. Let's see if we can get one more nice view of him before we continue on our search for these mysterious mating leopards who are causing so much confusion in my head. And I will tell you a little bit more about my theories as to what's happening. This is probably as good as we're going to get for this giraffe. He's slowly moving into quite thick vegetation. I get so used to sitting and watching them and seeing them that sometimes I have a sudden realization as to how bizarre they really do look. So totally different from anything out here, anything else out here. Munching away at the guari bush. Now this big boy is out here all on his own at the moment. And Elaine, welcome to the Sunset Safari. You were wondering if they are solitary animals by nature. And the truth is, with giraffe, it just kind of depends on the mood that they're in. They don't have any kind of set herd structure. Obviously you will see females together with their calves. Sometimes you see groups of males from across all age spectrums. Sometimes you see mixed groups of females and males. It's what's known as a social aggregation. So it ebbs and flows, and they kind of just decide to join up with some giraffe for a while and then other giraffe for another time. Just having a look at what's happening on that side. I think Sean might have some action, but it is very, very thick on this side. I just want to hop onto the Game Drive channel and ask. Is Sean for Jamie? Have you guys got them there? Okay, copy, perfect. When I'm done here, I'll head across and give you guys a hand. Okay. Now Sean has picked up on their tracks. They're going straight south across the open area, and I would really like to go and be a little bit helpful. Maybe even hop out of the car and take a walk with Reese, the tracker. In the meantime, I believe that James is waiting for you so that he can update you on what he's been up to for this afternoon's Sunset Safari. So we're going to head across to him and catch up with you a little bit later, hopefully with those two leopards, so we can see what they've been up to.
Lion tracks. Hello everybody, welcome to Wendy, where the communications issues are not yet resolved. My name is James Hendry. I am wielding my communication device like a disciplinary weapon, so I can hit Brian, who's on camera today, dressed very smartly in a Wild Earth t-shirt, not shirt, t-shirt, a proper khaki bush shirt. So he's looking pretty bushy, and he's on camera today. We've come to this clearing where I'm going to stop the car so that we might observe 3 pigs and some those are the pigs, and some impala. Now, you are on a live Game Drive Safari, as I'm sure you've realized by now, unless you have just tuned in which case you are most welcome. You have missed some of the drive. Where have you been? You are welcome to talk to us, and we do love it when you talk to us. Hashtag Safari Live. If you are tweeting like a, what should we say today, a magpie shrike, beautiful lilting call, or questions at WildEarthTV if you wish to address us by way of email. As I have said before, the communications via the South African Post Office, now into its 10th month of a strike, are totally useless. Not entirely unlike some of the communications coming out of Wendy today. Anyway, we are online. We are with a couple of pigs, and we've come into this particular area to see if we can't find tracks of Madiba, a young male leopard aged just over a year. We did find his tracks on the main road just to the west of where we are now. Don't know where they've gone. They did seem to head off north and then east into the block where just before you joined us, so we'll carry on following up around here for the next little while and see if we can't pick him up. And I believe Jamie did tell you that he is going to be darted. That means that he's going to be basically shot with a pellet gun, if you like, and a dart will go into his rump and quickly spray in some what they call rabicin, which is an inoculation against rabies. He will bite it out, probably growl a little bit, and then get on with his life. So that's what's going to happen there. It's very good news. And in case you have been hiding under a rock, what happened yesterday was that Madiba caught a domestic dog, and so this is just a precautionary measure to make sure that that magnificent little leopard, who's been so very kind in letting us watch him, and with with whom we've spent many happy hours, is going to be absolutely fine. Right, there go the pigs. I'm just listening to the game drive radio. Again, this is coming through live, so you can probably hear it talking. The voice of Aubrey, very restrained is our friend Aubrey. There was a guide at Djuma, which consists of 2 lodges just behind where we are now, and he is going to help us try and find Madiba around this particular area. I believe there's a question from Cameron, aged just 5 years, about whether Madiba is going to have to go to the doctor. Cameron, Madiba is not going to go to the doctor. Out here, remember, with the cats that we have here, you can't just sort of pop them in a basket and take them off to the vet, because if you do that, well, they're just a bit big really, and they get a little angry. And you don't want an angry 1-year-old leopard. They are very strong and can get very upset very fast. So what we do, Cameron, is that he will be inoculated with a dart, and that dart will be fired by a little rifle like this, and it will be a little bit sore for him. It'll be like having a sore injection, but because he's a big tough leopard, he will be fine. So he doesn't go to the doctor, he will stay here, and the doctor will come here, and we'll just shoot him with that little injection, and while he probably will feel a little bit of pain, it'll be much better than him getting sick. So it's just like when you perhaps have had to have a couple of injections. It's exactly the same thing for young Madiba. It continues to be a rather interesting day weather-wise. I am not hearing much from the final control. I'm saying that as a signal to them, not because it's relevant to your enjoyment of the drive. And so it was started off very cold this morning and remained cold, and this wind came up and it was pretty foul, and we didn't take off any layers, and then suddenly at about 12 o'clock it got quite warm. Not hot, but warmish, and now you can see the clouds are starting to build, and there's actually quite a nice atmosphere around the place, as there has been from this morning, and you can see the clouds are building over the Drakensberg mountains there to the west. I'm just going to... I am now copying the final control, who I believe will probably have a question for me. Get it now. And Paul, you are observing that the bush has just turned green. Well, you and Brian are of the same opinion. We were driving along here and he was just saying, you know, every day it turns greener and greener, and it is astonishing, especially in those clearing areas, that the bush has turned so green. The grass, of course, depends largely on not being competed with by the trees, and the trees in the clearings are obviously not there, that's why they're clearing, and so the grass roots don't have much to compete with. So in those clearings where the nutrition is high and there's been some water, the grass flushes extremely fast, and it's so exciting to see. It's just the most wonderful time of the year. The birds are starting to breed, the grasses are coming up, the trees are starting to flush with new leaves, and it's just it's a time of rediscovering the bush all over again, and so one of my very favorite times of year. So the tracks of the young leopard came up from there, and then we think came towards where those power lines you might be able to see in front of us are, and that's where we're going to continue our search. Now, while we're looking for this young male leopard, as the sky starts to turn an ominous grey colour, Mavis, you would like me to tell you if I think Madiba will call if he feels threatened for his mother. Mavis, I do not believe he will. Remember that a leopard, when it calls, makes itself a lot more obvious. Now, if Shadow is perhaps miles away, and for those of you who don't know, Shadow is young Madiba's mother. If he's feeling threatened, if something threatens him and he then starts to call, that thing, whatever it is, will know exactly where he is. He has no idea where Shadow is. She might be miles away. She won't hear him. So it would just actually be very counterproductive. All the cats, when they get into trouble, especially the solitary ones, will go completely silent and they'll try and hide. A leopard's greatest defense is its ability to hide and disappear. Now this of course makes it very difficult to find them in the bush, but it also makes them one of the most successful predators that Africa and certainly the world has ever known. So their strategy is highly successful. They are spread from all the way in the southern Cape up through southern Africa, East Africa, into the rainforests. The only bit of Africa that they're not in is the main desert of the Sahara. You can probably find them in the Atlas Mountains north of that. All the way around North Africa they used to occur, certainly across the Isthmus of Suez and into some of the deserts around Jordan, and then further west, all the way into the far east of Russia. And that's the same species of leopard. Different subspecies as you go that have become separated over time, but it's the same species. Very successful, magnificent leopard that we are trying to find right here. So an excellent question here about the upcoming medication and inoculation of young Madiba from Larry. Larry, you want to know, will he become nervous of the game drive vehicles as a result of the darting? Larry, I don't think so, you know. I think that he'll hardly notice. He'll be lying on the ground or on a termite mound, as is his general wont, and suddenly he will feel a wasp sting in his bottom, with a fairly substantial wasp sting in his bottom, and I think that will be it. He will probably leap up and down and may move off, but I don't know that he'll even associate it with the vehicle that he's around. And we're now on what's known as the Triple M break, and between us, this is the boundary between us and Arafuza, where Jamie is, where you saw her earlier, and so we can cross this particular boundary, and obviously the animals don't know the difference. It is a little bit difficult to track here, of course, because it's a main access road, and so there are lots and lots of cars. And this is where we first saw his tracks earlier today, just down there. So I'm driving very slowly to see if we can't spot him. And surely not. Surely it can't be that easy. No, it's not that easy, everyone. It's a log. It is a log. It is a log. And just to let you know, we don't know where Shadow is, but there were female leopard tracks around here earlier today. So it's possible that she's also in this area. So Mavis, if you're worried about where Shadow is, she might be around here. I'm going to show you what I did see, which will probably make you lose respect for me. Brian, can you see the log there? That looks vaguely-ish, leopardish-ish colours, wheatish, sort of. Yeah. That's it. Yes. That's what I saw. Yes, I'm just checking with my binoculars. It is in fact a decaying piece of stump, not Africa's premier wildlife target, Panthera pardus.
A fine spot.
Yeah, I think so. There we go. suspicious looking log. On we go. I will keep looking over the side of the car to check for more tracks. And we had an interesting question once from somebody who asked me why it is that I only look over the right-hand side of the car. Do animals only walk on one side of the road? And I suppose a fairly valid question. The only reason I don't look out the other side, of course, is because I'm not 7'3" and therefore can't lean over. That's what Brian's for. Brian's is, apart from filming me and whatever animals we manage to find, his job is to look over to the left-hand side of the car and see if anything walks on the left-hand side of the road. At this stage, not much. So I suspect he's gone into this block over here somewhere, but these tracks are not that fresh. I think they're probably from last night sometime. And I'm quite enjoying the fact that I have to use this handheld radio because it does give me a certain amount of authority. I feel I can point with great authority and vigor into the wilderness, emphasize my point. And I can point out tracks sometimes if I find them. I haven't driven over them already. So this access road that we're driving down now, in the hope of finding a beautiful young male leopard, leads to a lot of the lodges in the northern part of the Sabi Sands. And they include lots of the people we passed when we were on game drive, from Nkoro, Cheetah Plains, Chitwa, Hoffman's, Arathusa, Simbambili and Shirley's. I think that's about all of them. And of course some private lodges on Torchwood and on Biffle's Hook. And that's why finding tracks on this road after a day like today is not easy. I'm just going to get a quick update from them on the radio.
Okay. Right here to Palapur.
I'm just listening. Oh, did you pick up any further tracks?
Yeah, negative, Jim. So, where the last step was right here in Palapur.
The last tracks I saw were going north along Triple M towards the power lines, on Triple M. I did check the power lines, but I am live, so I may have missed them crossing the road.
Okay. The power line, the one close to Vietnam or power line just close to Triple M.
And the power lines that go on to Vietnam. So there are a few of us in the area looking for him, and Aubrey of course has a tracker sitting on the front of his vehicle, which is very helpful. So while we're driving along at snail's pace, looking for sign of leopard, what are they looking at, do you suppose, Brian? Are they coming this way? We're just going to have a quick listen here to see if there are any alarm-calling birds or squirrels or any such alarmed animals that have maybe seen a young male leopard. Genevieve in New York, you obviously noticed that the Salati males, one of them has a canine that's been broken off. Now, what that means is, well, you also asked us, do you think he broke it trying to get calcium from bones? I think he probably broke it during the course of normal feeding. They do use those canines extensively when they're feeding. I suspect the canines get quite a lot in the way when they're trying to grind the meat off the bone. So what their molar teeth are called carnassials, and they go over each other like that, and that scrapes the meat off the bone. But because the canine is obviously in the mouth, and things are different in awkward shapes, I suspect sometimes the canines get in the way, and after a lot of use they might break off. They could also, of course, get abscesses and become weakened, and in so doing they might snap off. I don't think it's because of a specific need or desire to bite into bones for calcium, and if they did do that, they'd use the back teeth. They wouldn't use the canines to do that. Those canines are specifically for killing. They are the ones that puncture the back of the neck of their prey, that dig in and give them grip if they're trying to kill a buffalo or a wildebeest over the snout like that, or clamp round over the windpipe, depending on what they're trying to kill. So that's what the canines are basically for. And you say you've seen Mvula, who is a male leopard of, I think, around 11 years. You say that you've seen Mvula's also got a missing tooth, and I'm sure it's missing for exactly the same reason as that. Nice one, Genevieve. I can't hear anything alarm calling. I'm also slightly suspicious of that very stationary car just up in front of us, and it may be that it's from Aratuza and therefore cannot speak with us. So we're just going to go and have a look-see if they don't have something fascinating up there. But after all, that is why we're here, Brian, to find fascinating things. Hornbill. So this is round about where he was last seen, that young male leopard. So because he's not with his mum, I think it's quite likely that he is still around here somewhere with any luck. I'm just going to chat here with Andrew, who is from Cheetah Plains, and he will maybe be able to give us a little bit of an update. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm full of joy.
Good, thanks.
Yes, yes.
There's some dog moving.
Oh, good. Okay, thanks. Tractor, that, where are you heading to?
I'm heading towards the signals there.
Okay, alright.
So yeah, I'm looking for the 7 Yamazan.
Okay, alright.
But I found it, I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Alex.
Bye-bye. That was Andrew from Cheetah Plains. Highly experienced guide. And he said he saw some elephants going through here, so I'm sitting to see if we can't pick them up. It is very thick in here though. So I wonder if we won't come round the other side. Right, so while we look for these elephants and perhaps tracks further evidence of Madiba, we're going to pop across to Scott, who is on foot with Steph and Jean-Dre, and they are going to tell you a bit about what they found on foot, and I will see you a little bit later.
Good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the walking safari. It's so exciting, and I really loved the last walk I did with all of you guys, so it's good to be back out here again. And wasn't it exciting wondering what lay ahead on M? Hopefully James will be able to find you those elephant that was seen. Failing that, Madiba, who I believe the other vehicles are now searching for, would be equally good. Now, a few little things that I must mention while we are on foot. It's very different to being on the vehicle. Jean-Dre is on camera, and there's a third person who is Steph. He's kind of behind the scenes, and he is carrying a rifle in case we do get ourselves into a dangerous scenario. It's certainly not our intent, and we're going to be looking for smaller things to show you, like this tiny little dropping that I've picked up, and this, interestingly enough, is the dropping from a scrub hare. And the reason why it's of particular importance today is because I forgot the ash sock that we use with old ash from the campfire to tell us which way the wind is blowing. And fortunately, where we started our walk, it was an area where I knew a lot of scrub hares spent time, so it wasn't difficult to collect this little handful of droppings. Oh, we lost one, but that's fine. And look at how perfectly they did show us which way the wind's blowing. As I break it up, it's very fine, and as you can see for now, the wind is blowing from my right to my left. So that's something very important that we're going to have to use whilst walking, so that we don't startle any animals. It's important to know about all of our surroundings here, and it's quite thick. If we take a little bit of a look around, we could quite easily bump into elephants or buffalo or rhino here, and these animals are all potentially dangerous, and we do not want to get into a dangerous situation and find you small things along the way. A small thing that we are looking for is a female leopard called Karula, and her tracks were heading from the camp, which is kind of behind us, towards us. And we've started fine combing this area to see if we can find any tracks or sign of her. I heard a tree squirrel alarm calling in that direction, so we're going to take a short walk along there. But I spotted something earlier. It is the old hoof of a buffalo, so it's a bit of a crime scene here, actually. And this lion would have been attacked by, buffalo would have been attacked by a lion, I guess. And it's one of the two cloves on a buffalo's hoof. There would naturally be another one on the right hand side like this. And what's nice about this hoof is that you can see that it's hollow inside, so it's got a keratin outside, no different to the horn of an animal. And as I reverse, you could also almost imagine if this was a horn on the head of an animal, it wouldn't be very spectacular. But it does help to explain the difference between horns and antlers. And horns are hollow with a bony inner. So this would be white, solid bone that you could actually pull off the horn once the animal has died. But it's just the keratin sheath that you see on the horns of animals, that brown layering, whereas antlers grow throughout the life, also only grow seasonally, unlike the horns of antelope, and they are shed. And they don't have this hard keratin sheath. They've actually got a felt kind of very thin layer of skin that grows, and as well as some very fast-growing bone. So that's the difference between an antelope and a deer in terms of the horn. Interestingly, look here. I've just noticed, it's going to be hard to see, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my torch, and if I shine in here, I've just seen quite a few bugs. How am I shining there, Jean? Is it okay? Can you see? Can you see all those bugs in there? They're right up in the top corner, a whole bunch of bugs, and these must be possibly a form of the horned borer moth. And I know it may be difficult to see, we're trying new things here, so apologies if it's not working, but there are a few little bugs in there that are either seeking shelter in here or have the unique ability of being able to break down keratin, which is a very hard substance to break down. Anyway, there were a whole lot of bugs. We don't want to disturb them too much. So we'll put the hoof back, found it, which was here. It was upside down. And continue off in the direction that we heard these tree squirrels. It's really so wonderful seeing all the fresh growth out here, green shoots, sprouts. After only 24 hours of rain, after the first rain that we received, there's pieces of green everywhere. Such a welcome of scenery. I think you may be able to feel and absorb all this fresh green growth while being on foot, while you're moving around in the vehicle with Jamie, and this afternoon you may be able to pick up finer details. It's a great thing about a bushwalk. It's the small things that we don't get to necessarily show you while we are on foot, while we are on the vehicle. And maybe I was wrong, because Paul's already sent in a comment saying that he noticed that it's got a lot greener, and that was why you were driving around with James. You're 100% correct. Watch out for the little stump there, Jean-Andre. Something that is important for me to touch on is how difficult it is for Jean-Andre to do the camera work here. He can't see where he's stepping because he's so focused on filming that I'm going to have to help him along the way sometimes, and we've just encountered some nasty thorns here. And what I'll do is I'll actually try and break off a branch and show you these nasty thorns. This is the notorious buffalo thorn, which is both a straight thorn and a hook thorn. And it's a very nasty one to get caught in. In Afrikaans, one of the local African languages, a derivative of Dutch, it's also known as a wagabiki boom, which means wait a bit tree, because you will certainly be waiting a bit if you get caught in it. It's got some cultural importance as well in the country, so it's not only important for Jean-Andre to avoid them whilst we're walking through here, but it's important for the Zulu tribe of South Africa. And they'll use these branches for ceremonies to collect and gather the souls of people, family members who have passed away. And what they'll do is they will break a branch from a tree within the home area of where the soul needs to be returned, and then they'll travel with it by bus or by plane or by foot or by bicycle, get to wherever the person has passed away and perform a ritual. And with this stick they will gather the soul of the person who has passed away, and when they travel back to bury this person and let them rest in peace, what they will do is they'll actually pay for a bus fare or a plane fare to transport the soul back. So an interesting little traditional story there, a well-known one, but one that I really love. So that's the buffalo thorn that we're avoiding. He also has a large antenna coming up the back out of his, which is about 20 pounds in weight. So a little bit different to sitting on the vehicle, so bear that in mind. He has some go-back waves alarm behind us. This time of the year, they're communicating with one another and not necessarily alarming at a leopard. And we've just got a question through from Pamela, and while we get comfortable here next to the skull, I can explain to Pamela that yes, of course I am nervous of running into any dangerous animals, i.e. lion or elephants, but I've gone through rigorous training, spent a lot of time on foot with mentors who have had countless encounters with dangerous animals, and they teach you how to react. And interesting enough, animals are a lot more predictable than humans, so you'll find a lot of the time, provided you respect animals and give them their distance and listen to their warnings, they're not going to run after you and chase you. They don't see us as food sources, and most of the time they're actually quite scared of us and will prefer to run away than risk confrontation. Now, the reason why I have these little scrub hair droppings to check the wind every now and then is one method that we use to avoid getting into trouble. The other thing is looking for tracks or fresh dung. Here's some elephant dung right next to me, but it's very dry, and if I turn it over, you can even see one or two very small holes where termites have already begun breaking this dung down. I can't see the holes under the sand yet, but they will eat from they'll have their burrows in the ground up into the dung, which is lying like this, but just like a sign like that. This was very wet, very hot. That would be a clue that we need to be careful. There could be elephants in the area. Also, Pamela, I did mention earlier, Steph is around. He does have a rifle. We don't intend on ever using it, but it is a method of last resort. In all my time, Pamela, I've never had to shoot an animal, and I've spent countless times on foot. So, interesting. This is what I love about being alive. You get to find all these interesting things that we get to show you very easily. And this is the skull of a guess. Some people might be thinking crocodile, but the teeth are on. If you look over here, those are the molars of a herbivore. Interestingly, this is going to give it away for you. What animal, when looking at you out of their eyes, has got two growths coming out of the end of their mouth or upper muzzle? It's a warthog. And this is where the top tusks, the very big prominent tusks that are easy to see, would emerge from. And interestingly enough, from the bottom jaw, there's a second set of tusks. But they are the ones that you actually need to be careful of, even though you don't notice them. And that's because they're thin, razor-sharp tusks that will occlude and rub against the bigger, bolder tusks that you think are the dangerous ones, but actually aren't, every time the warthog chews. So it does have two sets of tusks on each jaw, top and bottom. And isn't it wonderful the way Mother Nature preserves interesting things like this for us to look at? Warthogs, like most pigs, have got very complex and powerful senses of smell. and that's where a lot of the smell will be processed through that cavity over there, and they'll use their nose not only to smell but also like a little shovel. And what warthogs do is when they're feeding, I'm just going to put the rabbit droppings down in a little pile safely there, they go down, instead of feeding on their feet or their hooves, they'll drop down onto their nose like this, and then use their nose like a spade to dig up that they can then nibble on. So quite a normal maneuver for a pig, but quite nice to see, and it's something that we will be seeing a lot more of in the summer months. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more warthog running around, and one thing that we can really look forward to is seeing the piglets. They are such cute little animals. They've got huge bursts of energy and go chasing one another around, and they are tiny, so that's something to look forward to. Haven't seen any piglets yet, but they should be on the way soon. Now, we mustn't forget we are looking for Karula, so as we walk through here, please make sure to keep your eyes peeled for a flick of a tail. And we've just got a comment through from Cecilia saying that the dung looks like shredded wheat. I'm guessing that was the elephant dung that we looked at earlier, and I agree with you, that did look very much like shredded wheat, Cecilia. And what you'll find interesting about elephant's dung is it varies throughout the year. At some times of the year you'll see lots of pieces of bark and branches and roots. Other times of the year you'll just see grass. Then probably in February or March their dung will be covered with the marula fruits, only partially digested as they pass through the elephants. But it is something to remember when looking at elephant dung. You can almost age it because you know what they feed on at the different times of the year. Even though it's a wide variety of different plants, it's usually the grasses now when they're fresh and green, and the bark and the roots during the winter months. So now we have something very, very interesting, and that is that an animal that a lot of you would love to see that we have yet to be able to show you on Safari Live has dug this hole, and it's called an aardvark. Sometimes if the area is fresh, the area where it would have been sitting and actually almost the tail has made a line in the sand. Digging isn't fresh, and it's gone here, and massive claws to dig the sand out that you can all see around me here. What it's done is it's burrowed into a termite mound that it's been able to feed on with a very long tongue that it slithers into all the holes, and it's an expert digger that only moves around late at night in this area. Other parts of Africa, they can move quite readily during the day, but the aardvark, an anteater in this area, only operates at night. One day we'll get lucky though. Just heard something off in the distance. It could have been elephants trumpeting. And a breeding herd of elephants is very dangerous on foot, and we would prefer to avoid that at all costs, unless this. And interestingly enough, Brent, luckily enough this morning, got to see some elephants on foot with Jandre and Steve. I'm sure a lot of you got to see that as well. What a rush, how exciting. But in this area, it's very windy conditions. I'd prefer not to bump into them. So I'm going to bank that information, elephants trumpeting to the north, and certainly keep that in mind if we have to head in that area later. And Pamela, this is a good example of your situational awareness, your awareness of surrounding help greatly when walking through the bush. If you know what to listen for, know what signs to look for, the dangers become a lot easier to identify and to avoid. Whereas if you don't know what to listen for, or your ears aren't trained, then you could very quickly get into trouble. Well, the great thing about this time of the year is we've got the fresh growth coming, but you can still very clearly see game trails from points of interest, water holes, feeding areas, and they allow the animals, just like we travel on highways, to move easily. And it certainly helps us when walking in the bush. It will change, and the growth that we expect here, the rain season, is immense. We'll probably only be able to see a quarter as far as we can see now, and you're going to have to be more cautious when walking in the summer months. Come on, Karula, where are you hiding? So good places to check when walking are termite mounds, and leopards love lying up on termite mounds on a cool afternoon like this. She wouldn't be in the shade necessarily, so let's creep along here. Make sure you don't trip on the buffalo leg bone and hip bone along the way. Mind your step. Maybe this is the other hoof that we were missing earlier. And another buffalo hoof, probably the work of the Matimba males a couple of months ago. And we mustn't lose focus though, because we just want to creep up and check carefully. So if we take a closer look now, I've just moved around into an area where we can see the termite mound. So let's write this termite mound off. Karula is not on top of it. Also important to remember on hot afternoons, which I said we are not experiencing this afternoon, simply the way you walk around a termite mound could get you into trouble or not. Now, if it was very hot, the sun was setting, one side of the termite mound would be in shade. So if you walked around hugging the termite mound and then popped into the shade where an animal might be fast asleep, that's a good example of how you may startle it. So, hot days, you're approaching a termite mound, always give the shady section a wide berth. That way, limiting your chances of killing something. So we can continue though on our wide berth. And another question has just come through. Thanks so much. Isn't it wonderful how we can communicate while walking on a live safari with all around the world? It's wonderful to have you with us. And as much fun as it is being on foot, we're going to get you back here a little bit later. But Jamie's found something quite interesting. It's not a fairy tale story, so don't be ready for it. It's a little bit of a harsh scene, but Jamie has found something, so we're going to send you across to her and catch up with you a little bit later on the trail of Karula.
Remember this.
Welcome back, and Viam and myself are still in the vicinity of where these leopards were last seen, and just before it disappears I have seen a duiker with probably the worst broken leg I've ever seen before. So just to warn you in advance, if you are sensitive and this might disturb you, then perhaps now is the time to look away. He is quite far away now, and I'm not going to drive up too close because I don't want to make it run more than it has to. It cannot bear any weight on that leg. And when I first saw it, it ran away from me, or it bolted briefly, and the leg went from side to side instead of front to back. Very, very seriously injured. And I would say that its chances of survival with a break like that are probably very slim. Sure, but right in the vicinity of where these two leopards' tracks were last seen. I don't know how he got that injury. It would be guesswork. I would guess and say that he maybe, whilst running away from something, he might have hooked his leg in a hole, could be, or even hit it on a stump, caught his ankle in some way, and it snapped right at the hock, so right at the elbow joint. Oh, you can see, I don't want to I know that the view isn't spectacular, but I really don't want to get too much closer to where he is. You can see he's not putting any weight on that left front leg at all. Shame, poor little guy. And that's definitely going to make him an easy meal for a marauding leopard. Now, I thought that we were at the end of our cold front, but it seems to be that something is blowing in. So what I'm going to do is just, shift forward slightly so that we can have a look at the clouds that are rolling in, and it seems to be the front of a cold front, which doesn't fill me with any particular joy. Look how spectacular the clouds look, though. Really, really pretty. It's interesting, it's coming in from the west. It almost feels as though it's coming in from the northwest, which is usually it comes more from a southerly direction. But the wind is swirling. I'm sure you can hear that if you're listening and have your audio up. It's really making things difficult. But for the two leopards that are somewhere in this area, it is perfect hunting weather. That wind will serve as a great way of distracting the prey animals' attention and just disadvantaging them in terms of compromising their sense of smell and their sense of hearing. Now, just if you're wondering what's been happening with these leopards and why I'm sitting out here on the Arathusa airstrip, is there's 5 guides all working around this area, desperately trying to follow up on where these leopards have gone. And it seems to me that they have grown wings and flown from their position of their last tracks. So we went up to where we last saw them, they crossed south onto Magic Woolly Open, and from there there's 2 trackers out on foot walking that block just to see. There's lots of hiding places for 2 leopards under guari bushes, so that's where I would guess they would be tucked away. But I don't want to add a third person into the mix and go walking through that block as well, just because on a base level, mating animals tend to be a little bit more alert and a little bit more skittish, so I don't want to disturb them in any way. I think 2 people walking in that block is enough. But I do have a quiz for you, and that was actually something that was spotted by eagle-eyed Wiem. Let me just grab it. I wasn't too sure about the ethics of this particular poo, or at least the level of hygiene involved in this particular poo, so I've compromised and used toilet paper instead. And I have a question for you. I want you to tell me what it is, and we're going to have a nice close look. Now I'm going to give you 2 hints, I think. First of all, have a look at what's inside there, and then have a look at the color. These are 2 different aged pieces of poo, and if I say the correct term for it, I might give it away, so I'm not going to. 2 differently aged pieces of poo, both collected from the same place. The one has started to go white in color, and to give you a rough idea of size, it is probably the size of a very large leopard scat. That is how big they are. And I don't want to give you too much of a hint in terms of what is in there. I'm going to leave you to interpret, say, these little pieces here. I'm going to leave that up for your interpretation as to what they are. Might even, just go for it. Let's just grab a little piece here. Oh, it wants to blow away. No, stay. Okay, I've grabbed a little piece out of it. That's a hint as well. And you can send your answers to my poo quiz. I don't want to give the name away, and I don't want to give the game away. You can send that through on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through your answers to questions@WildEarth.tv. And both Wiem and myself have decided it might be a very good idea to return to that area at a later stage to see if we can find the particular animal concerned. Now, I don't want to give you any more information, and I do want to, because I think that would make it a little bit too easy. But in the meantime, we're going to get off the rather ugly airstrip and head around and see what we can see. Still no sign of those leopards. Here's my makeshift glove, which is essentially just toilet paper. I'm going to keep this here for later referral, as you do. I can't see our Dacre friend anymore. It's disappeared off very slowly on 3 legs. But Larry, you've suggested that it's going to be leopard food soon, and there is a very, very good chance that it will be. Although they are upwind of it, if they are where we think they are upwind of it, which might give them away. But that Dacre on 3 legs is definitely no match for these 2 leopards. But we'll keep our fingers crossed. Maybe he'll be okay. I would think probably not. Very sad to see, but still part of the cycle of nature that happens out here. As I try and escape this billowing gale that is threatening to take my hat and throw it across the Arathusa airstrip, I believe that James has some thick-skinned pachyderms to show you, so we're going to head across to him and catch up with you a little bit later.
Live. Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy, where we are sitting in the peaceful, gentle company of a little herd of elephants, and it is such a deep pleasure to be here. We followed the tracks of Madiba with Aubrey all the way up to the gate of Vuatela or Gowrie or the Sabi Sands. So he's around there. We can't broadcast from there, so we left the area and we've come back to this magnificent little herd of elephants. And it was frenetic, kind of rushing around trying to find the tracks, and that feeling of being here with these peaceful giants is just such a wonderful juxtaposition to the the freneticism of the tracking expedition. So I'm going to enjoy these peaceful giants with you, and I hope you enjoy them too, of course. I actually athletically remove myself from the picture. Just wonderful. That's an old cow, I think. Well, not that one. That one's a young tuskless bull. Oh, it's interesting. Completely tuskless. Look at that. No tusks at all. Now that's not completely unusual. It does happen, and I suspect that he was born without tusks. Well, they're all born without tusks, but I mean born without the ability to grow them. And that's not very uncommon. It's not extremely common, but it will make his life a little bit difficult as he gets older, because he does definitely look like a young bull as opposed to a cow. Not so important for cows because they don't use them for any kind of conflict resolution, which the bulls do, of course. And there is some evidence, of course, that tusk size does help with mating opportunities, so he unfortunately won't have that advantage. But quite apart from that, tusks are also very useful when it comes to eating and breaking branches, especially during the winter months. So while not being tremendously hamstrung by the process, you can see he's using his feet there to break off some Pterocarpus rotundifolius or roundleaf teak. And while he won't be completely hampered by the lack of tusks, it will make life a little more difficult. There's another little one coming up towards us now, chewing on a stick. Looks like just the 4 of them at this stage. And at the moment they seem to be very relaxed, which is just wonderful. We are having a few communication issues, so even though we are live on Game Drive, and you would normally be able to speak to us on #SafariLive or questions@WildEarthTV, if your question doesn't get answered, it's probably because we're having a few comm difficulties. But at the moment I am in the sultry and dulcet tones of Nicky Austin continue to warble in my ear pleasantly whenever there is a question. And you can see for these elephants it's still a little bit of a difficult time. So although the grass is flushed, there's not a huge amount of it around for them to graze on, and so they're still selecting for quite woody material. And what you'll find is, look at how they use their feet. It's just so amazing to see. They're breaking off a lot of wood, and especially these round leaf teaks. I believe you were looking at some elephant dung with Scott, and some of you said it looked like wheat. I don't believe it looks like wheat at all, and you were wondering whether I would eat some. The answer is no, I will not eat it. I will certainly not eat elephant dung, not even on television. Well, possibly. I don't think I will eat any. I wouldn't choose to eat any. It certainly smells very delicious when it's the right age. Newly fresh elephant dung isn't particularly delicious to smell, but about a week or two old, and it smells very spicy and very sweet and lovely. And the dung, of course, this time of the year is filled with little pieces of stick, and that's because of what you can see them eating now. It's quite interesting, Brian, did that youngster there also not have tusks? Do you remember?
The little one.
The littlest,
Yeah.
also not have tusks. So there are two tuskless elephants in this little herd. So they're probably born to the same mother, who's probably the tusked individual, the big one that we saw earlier.
Coming into your position.
There they go there. That, I'm sure that's the mother there. Or probably of both of them. This one looks to be about 10, and the other one, well, about 6 or 7. It's quite interesting. So she's obviously carrying some kind of recessive gene that means that the tusks don't grow in her offspring. That's really interesting. Now, while you're looking at that tree that is being macerated and destroyed by this young elephant, what I would like you to try and notice is that all of the branches around which that little bull is standing are part of the same plant. All of those sticks coming up, probably in a circumference or a diameter of about, say, 2 meters, come from the same rootstock. And that's just because the plant has been broken again and again and again and again over the years. Keep sending up new sticks, and the rootstock just gets thicker and thicker, and that's a very common response to defoliation and being broken up and bashed about a bit. Let's move a little bit forward and see if we can't get a better view. I've just spiked myself with my pointing device, aka handheld radio. Thank you, Laura in Pennsylvania, for your comment. You say that it looks like I enjoy my handheld pointing device and that I will miss it when it's gone. I think you're probably right, you know. It's a very good device. Now, Brian, watch out for the tree there. This young elephant is not very happy with us. It's not entirely uncommon for a tuskless bull to be slightly more wary than the others. I don't think that his lack of tusk will have affected him too much at this stage of the game, but it will as he gets older, and sometimes they turn into quite nasty adults because they've had a rough time and they've been bullied as youngsters, just like with people. So let's hope that this young fellow doesn't get too much in the way of bullying as he grows up. He's very consciously smelling us all the time, and the wind is blowing straight towards him, so he's getting a whiff of human all the time. Look at that amazing way they feed. Isn't that incredible? See how he lifts his trunk continuously to try and smell us? And that's because he's picking up the scent of human being mixed with diesel and possibly soap as well. And whatever deodorant you're wearing, Brian. What are you wearing?
Very splendid deodorant.
Very splendid deodorant. There we go.
I went blank on the name there.
Ryan wears a deodorant called Very Splendid Deodorant, and that's what that elephant is enjoying the smell of. And you may also just be able to hear the wind rustling through the leaves, the trees and the dry branches. If we pan across to the rest of the herd, you will see that they have found a little grove of combretum trees that are flushing, and they're eating those new leaves. Look at that. Right, now we're going to drive a little bit closer to these elephants, and Ruth in Costa Rica, while we do that, you say you watch a lot of cameras around the place. I think there are over 50 wild earth cameras around the world, which is quite a lot, and some of them are spread around here and some of them are nowhere near here, and you'd like a bit of a lay of the land, Ruth. I believe that you've asked about Tembe. Tembe Elephant Park is in the northern parts of KwaZulu-Natal, so quite a long way south of where we are now, at least sort of 300 or 400 kilometers, so a long way from here. Idube, I think there's one there, which is also in the Sabi Sands, is not far from here, and I'll just get a couple of names of the other ones and I'll tell you where they are too. I can try and draw you a map, but oh dear. As some of you will know, my drawing skills are not impressive. And we're also right now near, you can see that pole perhaps as we go past it. You see it now? Here it is. That pole is the Gowrie repeater from which the signal that you receive often goes. From the vehicle to one of those repeaters, we have 3 of them around the place, and it goes towards that repeater and then out into the ether, where somehow you manage to receive it about 2 seconds after I've said what I've said, which I find absolutely astonishing and well beyond the fathoming of my small brain. Young elephant still standing in the road. He's not very happy, this young bull. I think he's also probably just about to hit puberty, and so his testosterone levels are perhaps picking up a little. And he's having a very long smell at us. The rest of them don't seem to be in the slightest bit fazed by us at all. Beautiful, look at that. He doesn't even want to eat. He's just so fascinated by what he's smelling. Here comes the big cow. Quite an old lady, I would say. I may be wrong, but I'd put her in the region of about 45 years, and you can see some of her bones sticking out a bit after a tough dry season. But she doesn't seem to be lactating. That calf behind her is too old to be suckling exclusively, so she'll be okay. with the nutritional deficits that the dry season has enforced upon her. I'm going to sneak a little bit forward. It is very thick where they're going. We'll just sneak slowly down here. And watch them supping on the new combretum leaves. I find this very interesting that she's produced 2 tuskless calves. That's really fascinating. Immediately that young bull feels better because he's near his mother and he's not nearly as threatened as he was beforehand. I also think the fact that my voice is being masked by the sound of the engine is perhaps affecting him a bit less than having me blethering away at high volume with the engine off. Look at them loving the new combretum leaves. I have to be a little bit careful. They are full of tannins, those new leaves, and so they won't only eat those brand new combretum leaves. I suspect they probably look a bit nicer than they taste, and I can see that 1 or 2 of them picking the trees, the leaves, and then sort of sampling them and then dropping them. And again, you can see what a brilliant colour it is to be grey out here. I think far more than to be brown.
Yeah, the job that you move the car here, which direction I was heading? Because the south, just north of that reservoir.
The little one behind us, Brian. Trying to decide whether to go behind or in front. Come on, fellow, we're okay. So they're completely relaxed with us, which is just wonderful. Shall we go back a bit, Brian? Seems to be breaking up the termite mound a bit. I don't want to move everybody. There is a young bull coming behind us, but I